What's up, everybody? Welcome to the very first episode of what will hopefully be a long-running series that I am going to call Bourbon Street. This will be a segment that I do by myself for the most part. I'll probably have some guests come on at some point. Hopefully, if we can get some traction and this really takes off, I'll be able to get some interesting industry folks on from distilleries and maybe some other folks in the community come on and do this show. But for now, it's going to be mostly just me hopping on and rambling about bourbon and drinking. So I'll have a couple different types of episodes that I'm going to do. Some will be reviews for bottles that I get. Some will be history lessons for people that maybe don't know a lot about bourbon or want to find out more about their favorite brands or whatever. And some will be tastings where hopefully I will be able to then have a guest on and maybe send them some samples and do a little back and forth as we taste through a flight of different bourbons. And when I say bourbon, it's not just bourbon. I will also be drinking lots of rye, the occasional scotch, some Japanese whiskey. So it's really just like a whiskey show, but primarily my focus is going to be bourbon because that's what I like to drink. Today, for the very first episode, I thought it would be fun to do a side-by-side of two different bottles of Four Roses single barrel strength. So Four Roses is one of my very favorite distilleries. They might be my favorite. I don't know. It's a toss-up between Four Roses and Heaven Hill. But Four Roses is one of the most consistently good bottles of whiskey across every price point. So you can get their run-of-the-mill yellow label at any liquor store. You can get their small batch at any liquor store. You can get single barrel at almost any liquor store. There's a small batch select, which is a little harder to find based on your region. And then there's single barrel proofs, and there's limited releases every year, which are impossible to get your hands on. But they are one of my very favorite for a lot of different reasons. But first, I will give you a very brief overview of the legend of how Four Roses bourbon came to be from their website. So the legend is, it began when Paul Jones Jr., the founder of Four Roses Bourbon, became smitten by the beauty of the Southern Belle. It is said that he sent a proposal to her, and she replied that if her answer were yes, she would wear a corsage of roses on her gown to the upcoming grand ball. Paul Jones waited for her answer excitedly on that night of the grand ball. When she arrived in her beautiful gown, she wore a corsage of 4 red roses. He later named his bourbon Four Roses as a symbol of his devout passion for the lovely Belle, a passion he thereafter transferred to making his beloved Four Roses bourbon. So whether that's true or not, it's a cool story. And I like the idea that that's where the name of the bottle came from. But what I've got today is I have two different, like I said, single barrel proof bottles. I've got one, which is an OBSQ designation. We'll get into what those mean here in a minute. It's aged for 10 years, 8 months, 57.7% alcohol by volume. Then I've got an OESK, which is aged for 9 years and 6 months, which is 58.5% alcohol by volume. What do those letters mean, you may ask? Well, the designations on Four Roses bourbon spell out a lot of different things if you know what you're looking for. So there are 10 different variants. The designations are all those 4 letters that you'll get on the front of the bottle. The O will always be the same. O just means that the whiskey is produced at the Four Roses Distillery in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. The E or the B designate which mash bill they use for this specific bottle. So a B bottle is going to be a mash bill of 60% corn, 35% rye, 5% malted barley. Now, if you're a whiskey drinker and you're like, oh, 35% rye, that's pretty high. It is. Four Roses is a high rye bourbon. That is, I think, why it is my favorite, because I am a huge fan of rye whiskey. And I like the spice and the flavor notes that come with a high rye mash bill. A mash bill E is going to be 75% corn, 20% rye, 5% malted barley. So that's your second letter. So you've got your O and then a B or an E. Then S always the same as well, designates straight whiskey distillation. Then you've got a V, a K, an O, a Q, or an F. That is going to designate which one of their 5 different yeast strains they use to create the bottle that you're drinking. So put all that together, you get 10 different variations. A V yeast is going to be a slightly more fruit forward flavor. A K yeast is going to be a spicier, some of like your baking spices and rye spice, a little more forward. An O is going to be rich fruit, like cherries and plums and like the dark red fruits. Q is going to be more of a floral essence, and F is going to be herbal notes, which kind of goes into floral essence a little bit, but you know, you'll figure it out. So the standard single barrel, what I was talking about, you can buy at any store pretty much, aged between 7 and 9 years, and it's always the OBSV recipe, which is their recipe number 1. So O, Four Roses. It's B, which is their primary mash bill, which is 60% corn, 35% rye, 5% malted barley. S, because straight whiskey. And then it's a V, which is going to be your delicate fruit. This is their most common, most popular. This is the one that you'll find most of the time. Once you get into selecting your own single barrels, though, which you do if you're getting a bottle of single barrel proof, you get to choose what you want. So as I said, I have a glass of the OBSQ, which is OBSQ. So it's going to be the more floral essence of mash bill B, which is the higher rye. And then I have an OESK, which is second mash bill and the spicier side of the flavor profiles. So one of the really cool things about both of these bottles is that they went into their barrels under master distiller Jim Rutledge, who retired in 2015. Then they were bottled under current master distiller Brent Elliott, who had worked alongside Rutledge for 10 years prior to his retirement. So this is whiskey that was crafted and put in the barrel under the previous master distiller and then poured and bottled and sold under the current master distiller. So, 2 generations, they're not familial generations, but 2 generations of master distillers have had their hands on these bottles, which I think is really cool. So I'm going to do the OBSQ first, which is my, like I said, 57.7% alcohol by volume, 60% corn, 35% rye, 5% barley, 10 years, 8 months. It's supposed to have more of the floral essence, which you definitely get, so as you taste whiskey, if you don't know, which you may or may not, you taste whiskey, you want to kind of first, I guess we'll start with the basics. This is the first episode. I prefer drinking out of a Glencairn, which can be used for Scotch or used for bourbon or any whiskey, really. The tulip shape is designed to allow you to get the nose of what you're drinking without it being overpoweringly alcohol-y and any of those like acetone burning sensations or anything like that. It's supposed to eliminate a lot of that and really open it up and let you get some flavor. I usually allow my whiskeys to rest for a little while before I drink them, especially if it's a newer bottle. These have been sitting in the glass for about 20 minutes. You really don't have to rest them for quite that long, but I've been getting this video ready, so I had a little extra time. But anyway, I like to go stick my nose in, smell what I can. And this Four Roses is one of the few distilleries that I really feel like nails their notes, because some places will really go off the wall with trying to tell you you're going to catch all these crazy things that you can smell and taste. And I personally don't think anybody can really smell and taste those things. But Four Roses is very simple and very direct with it. And I absolutely agree. Lots of floral. You still get your standard bourbon smells. You get your candies and like toffee and oak, but a lot of rye spice and a lot of the lighter floral notes on the nose. So when I drink, I like to take a mouthful of the whiskey, take the glass away, let it sit, let it coat the inside of my mouth for a second, swallow it down, exhale. And sit with it for a second. It's just, oh my God, Four Roses is so good. Four Roses is so good. Oh my God. I was lucky enough to get my hands on these 2 bottles of single barrel proof from a friend of mine out in New Hampshire, actually. I don't have the bottle in front of me. And he was kind enough to get these 2 bottles and send them to me. And this is the first time I've been able to actually have my own bottles of barrel strength Four Roses. So thank you very much to him. And anyway, the OBSQ is pretty close to the standard OBSV. So it's going to be the same mash bill, slightly different yeast. So it really is kind of like a proofed up version of their standard single barrel, but it's a little lighter. I don't get any of the fruit that you typically get from their standard V offerings. And it's a lot more, you get like tea on the back end, a little bit of like black tea. It's definitely a lot drier. And you still get a lot of the rye. Oh, but it's so sweet though. So first drink is going to be one thing. I typically encourage everybody, even if you don't like something the first time you sip it, go back for a second one because it totally changes the way that it drinks. I'll take my first drink, get what I can get out of it, and then pretty quickly go back in for a second because after you've had your first, the second drink really opens up and you start to get some of the more nuanced flavors. The tea is way more pronounced on the second go. It's very, very, very honey black tea, vanilla, rye spice, which if you're not familiar, it's kind of hard to describe. Like straight rye, you'll get a lot of, sounds weird to say, but like grass clippings. Like it's you can taste the ground almost, which I really like. But with this, you just get it kind of in the back of your throat, a little bit of. It's so hard to effectively convey what it tastes like. But honey tea is the predominant note on the second go with the OBSQ. Gonna take a brief break and get a glass of water, and we'll do the second. All right, so back we've got the second glass, which is my OESK, which is the mash bill E and the slight spice yeast strain with heavy rye influence. And this is the one that I am most excited about. This is the one that fits my personal flavor profile choices the most. So this is 58.5% alcohol by volume, 75% corn, 20% rye, 5% malted barley, 9 years, 6 months old. And we're going to jump right in. A much stronger nose, much more of your more standard bourbon notes, much more of the caramel, much more the oak, much more vanilla, caramel, vanilla, oak, and definitely the rye spice, baking spices, cinnamon, vanilla. You can definitely taste the slightly higher corn in the mash bill E, but it's not a corny whiskey at all. I feel like the rye is actually given a little more room to breathe, to be honest, even being a lower rye mash bill. But I think that's probably because of the K yeast strain. But whew, Jesus, that is about as close to a perfect glass of whiskey as I could find. Wow. All right. So everything that was there on the nose is there on the palate. It's strong vanilla, strong caramel, strong oak, and a lot of spice. I get a lot of cinnamon, a lot of cinnamon, a lot of vanilla, a lot of cinnamon, a lot of vanilla. And that's much more apparent after your first sip. Yeah. That is the best. That is the best glass of Four Roses I think I've ever had. That is incredible. Um, wow. Okay. So yeah, two different glasses of Four Roses, single barrel proof. That was fantastic. Thank you for anybody that decided to stick around and watch this inaugural whiskey drinking show. Um, let me know. I have close to 300 bottles of bourbon or various whiskeys here at the house. If there's something you'd be interested in hearing about, please let me know. And if not, I will catch you guys next time. Thank you for coming in and watching this very, very unprofessional, very impromptu bourbon tasting. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you back on the regular show.